So we got some really interesting fight announcements for this Abu Dhabi card in August. Nick Diaz is back and he's going to be going up against Vicente Luque. Not really sure how I feel about this. We also got Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. And we also got Vera versus Deiveson Figueiredo. I love this fight and we'll talk about that fight in a bit. But first I want to talk about Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson. I know everyone has pretty much already said this, but in my opinion it would have made a lot more sense for them to do Nick Diaz and Tony Ferguson and Vicente Luque versus Michael Chiesa. I think those are better fights. I think those are more fair fights, but these are the fights we got, so let's talk about them. And we're going to start with talking about the co-main, which is going to be Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz. And it's going to be 5 rounds, which is very interesting. That might actually favor Nick Diaz because we all know he's known for having amazing cardio. But Nick Diaz is 400 years old. The last time he fought was in 2021, 3 years ago, against Robbie Lawler, another guy who's 400 years old, and he lost in that fight. And if I remember correctly, which it's been a long time since I've watched that fight, but if I remember right, Nick Diaz didn't look too good. He looked slow and he looked out of shape, and then before that he hadn't fought since 2015 and then 2013 before that, so he's fought twice in the last 10 years. So it's safe to say he's probably going to decline even more, but Vicente Luque has declined a lot himself. He's only 32 years old, which is still fairly young for a welterweight, but his chin is just completely shot at this point. I'm pretty sure he had brain issues after the Jeff Neal fight, and Jeff Neal was just picking him apart, really destroyed his chin, and then in his last fight against Joaquin Buckley, he was really flinching to Buckley's power. Now, Buckley does hit really hard, but Luque really just wasn't responding well, and in general, Luque doesn't have great striking defense, and Nick Diaz is historically a solid boxer, has good volume, and even still, despite his age, probably has the cardio advantage. Luque's cardio isn't bad. He's gone 5 rounds before against RDA, but that was a very slow pace. But overall, I would say his cardio isn't great, and Nick Diaz might be able to pour it on him in the later rounds and possibly get a TKO. And on the ground, if this fight ends up there, which it would probably have to be Nick taking this fight down because Luque doesn't use much wrestling, but if this fight does get to the ground, I think Luque does have the advantage there. Nick isn't bad. I think Luque's just better. But at the end of the day, despite Luque declining, I think Nick Diaz has declined more. Luque's been way more active. He's a lot younger. He still looks good physically, and Nick Diaz did not look great physically against Robbie Lawler. And even if you look at this fight stylistically, prime versus prime, I think Luque still wins. So I think this is Luque's fight to lose. We also got Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa, which is going to be opening the main card. The battle of the losing streaks. Michael Chiesa is on a 3-fight loss streak. Tony Ferguson is on a 7-fight loss streak, which I believe is tied for the record with BJ Penn, and if he loses to Michael Chiesa, it will be the record. Isn't it crazy? Tony Ferguson went from being on a 12-fight win streak, which is up there. I think at the time it was the longest win streak in lightweight history. He went from the longest winning streak to the longest losing streak right after each other. That's crazy. But this is honestly a decent matchup for Tony. Chiesa isn't a great striker. Tony might even still have the advantage on the feet. Chiesa also has pretty much no power. He's not going to knock Tony out, whereas Tony still has some power. He dropped Bobby Green, hurt Michael Chandler, but on the ground, I would think Chiesa has the advantage there. He has good jiu-jitsu, but we see him get submitted all the time. Got submitted against Kevin Holland, got submitted against Vicente Luque, Anthony Pettis, Kevin Lee, and we know if this fight touches the ground, which it probably will, I think Chiesa has the ability to take this fight down. He's a solid wrestler, and he's a lot bigger than Tony. I mean, we've seen him get guys like Neil Magny, Vicente Luque down, but we know when this fight gets to the ground, Tony's not going to just sit there on his back. He's going to attempt submissions off of it, throw ground and pound, elbows, hammer fists, but he's also probably not going to be able to get up off his back, and once Chiesa gets his fight down, which as I said before, I think he will be able to, I think Chiesa's going to be able to control him on top, just hold top position, and Tony is almost too comfortable off his back. He showed no urgency against Patty to get up. He was actually inviting Patty to the ground, getting on his back, and then just throwing up submissions off his back, throwing up elbows, and that's just not going to be enough here. I mean, we've seen him get submitted by Nate Diaz and Bobby Green, and if Bobby Green is submitting you, Michael Chiesa absolutely can. So again, I think this is Michael Chiesa's fight to lose, but all of this would be fixed if you just did Tony Ferguson versus Nick Diaz and Vicente Luque versus Michael Chiesa. We also got Mackenzie Dern versus Loopy Godinez announced, which Godinez is probably going to win. Mackenzie Dern is such a weird fighter. She is so elite with her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but is the opposite of elite everywhere else. Her wrestling is terrible, her striking is terrible, pretty much much everywhere. Almost nobody can compete with her on the ground, but she doesn't have the wrestling to take the fight down, so she's forced to strike, and she can't really strike with anyone, so she loses. So I think she loses to Godinez as well. We also got Marlon Vera versus Deiveson Figueiredo. I love this fight. I would say Cheeto is the better striker on the feet, but he's just so inactive. He has such good defense, an amazing chin. I mean, look at those shots he was taking against Sean O'Malley. Not many guys in this division can take those. And that chin is going to be a big asset against Deiveson Figueiredo because Figgy hits extremely hard. He is the hardest hitting 125er ever, and his power definitely translates to bantamweight. I mean, he was rocking Rob Font, but I would say Cheeto is a better striker on the feet. He has a really good left hook. That's his best punch, and with both of them being orthodox, that left hook is open on Figueiredo. He also has really good kicks off both legs. We might see some head kicks off the lead leg, some power leg kicks, and we actually saw Cody Garbrandt use those leg kicks very well against Deiveson Figueiredo in their fight. And Cheeto will switch stances between southpaw and orthodox, which just opens up different sides, gives him different looks. But his big issue on the feet is he just doesn't throw much volume. He is way too inactive. He kind of just throws one shot at a time and will take the early rounds off and slowly pick up the pace, but by the time he starts getting going in the 4th, 5th round, he's already down and he's lost. And he's had the issue of starting too slow and going at too slow of a pace for pretty much his entire career, and he hasn't fixed it. And against Figueiredo, who, as I said, on the feet is very good, he's very fast, hits very hard, has a really good jab. He's probably going to throw volume at Cheeto, overwhelm him, and then take him to the ground because I think he definitely has the advantage on the ground. Cheeto's not bad there. He has good jiu-jitsu. He has solid submissions, but we've seen him get taken down and controlled before, like against Cory Sandhagen. And Cheeto's takedown defense, although not bad, isn't great. I think Deiveson can definitely take this fight to the ground, and once he gets to the ground, I think he's going to dominate on top, land big ground and pound shots, hold top position, and any opening Cheeto gives, Deiveson is going to attack. He has such good jiu-jitsu on the ground. So I do think, as an early prediction, Deiveson Figueiredo beats Cheeto, probably by decision. I think he takes him down, wins there, and even on the feet, Cheeto, as I said, is a better striker in my opinion. But I think Figgy is just going to win with volume. He's going to put the jab on him, look for the overhand, look for some leg kicks as well, whereas Cheeto is going to look for more singular shots. And although Deiveson doesn't have great striking defense, I think it's good enough here. And then we also got the main event, which is Cory Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. This fight was announced a few weeks ago, but I actually don't think I made a video on it, so I'll talk about it. Massive respect to Cory Sandhagen for even taking this fight because, for one, no one wants to fight Umar. He's a scary, up-and-coming guy, and also because he already deserves a title shot, and he's the number 2 ranked guy fighting the number 10 ranked guy, so this fight doesn't really make sense ranking-wise unless Cory wants to be active, because we know Merab is going to fight Sean. Merab is above Cory in terms of merit for the next title shot, so it could be a little while before Cory gets his title shot, and it's been a while since he fought as well because he had that tricep injury, so he probably does want to stay active, and he's one of the only guys who is willing to fight Umar. On the feet, Cory is definitely the better striker. Umar's solid. He has really good kicks, really good question mark kicks, front kicks. His kicks are amazing, but his boxing isn't great. He's not great defensively, not great offensively. He throws a lot of wide shots, and we saw him get countered and dropped by Beksat, which doesn't sound too good, but based on what I know about Beksat, he's actually a pretty solid striker. But Cory is definitely overall the better striker. He's so well-rounded on the feet, has great knees, great kicks, great boxing. He is easily the better boxer. That's where he wants to keep this fight. He wants to keep this fight in boxing range, use his jab, use his hooks, his combinations, but on the ground is where Umar's going to have his biggest advantage. Cory has good wrestling, solid takedown defense, but Umar is just better on the ground. He is really quick at taking your back, which Cory will sometimes give up his back. He gave up his back against Rob Font. Font just didn't capitalize on it. Gave up his back against Aljo, and Aljo choked him out in like 40 seconds because of that. The real question is, can Umar take this fight down, which I really don't know, because Cory does have solid takedown defense, and he's so long, it's going to be hard to get on the inside to shoot on him. He's 5'11" with a 70-inch reach. Umar is 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. He's actually pretty long for the division as well, but Cory is massive. and he's going to make it really hard for Umar to get on the inside and shoot for the legs. So for an early prediction, I'm going to break this fight down more later on. I'll go more in depth, but for an early prediction, I think I'm going to stick with Cory. I think he's going to defend a lot of the takedowns, and he's just overall better on the feet. And if he wins this fight, he definitely gets the title shot after Merab. And if Umar wins this fight, do you just give Umar a title shot after beating Cory? I don't think so. Maybe if Umar beats Cory, you do him versus Aldo for the #1 contender spot. Or maybe because we do have Cheeto versus Figueiredo on this card, maybe you put the winner of that fight against Umar if he wins. And then maybe do the rematch between Aldo and Jan, although I did hear Jan is dealing with some pretty big injuries, so he might be out for a while. There's a lot of ways you can matchmake this bantamweight division right now. But that is my breakdown for this Abu Dhabi card. It is a really good card, a really good fight night. I like that the UFC is getting out of the Apex and actually going and doing fight nights with crowds. It's just so much more enjoyable, and they usually stack the cards a lot more. It's a lot better quality of fights. You know, they just went to St. Louis. They're going to Louisville here in a couple weeks. They're going to Paris. They're going to Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi. They're going all over the place, and I love it. But anyways, that is the end of the video, guys. If you are new here and you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload, like the video, leave your early predictions and your opinions on these fights in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.